All right, so we are here for another episode of Candid Conversations. All right, and so we want to honor each of you as a Black woman in the fire service that is a firefighter at varying parts of your career. And so I would love to start it off with an introduction. And so within your introduction, if you could include your name, your rank, how long you've been a firefighter, and then talk a bit about what your day looks like, the work that you do.
My name is Adrienne Sims. I'm with San Francisco Fire Department. I've been with the job 22 years, going on my 23rd year. I'm an H10, which is a chief's aide, so I support the battalion chiefs or ACs in the field. An incident scene specialist is also what they call me. So I make sure that all of the stations that are in my battalion are balanced and that the staffing is what it should be. And then on scene, on any scene, whether it's a fire, a gas leak, MCI, which is a major casualty incident, that I keep track of everybody on scene and I do all the comms. Which is important because it keeps track of my brothers and sisters that are on scene and make sure that they're in a safe space. So if anything goes to the left, I am the one that knows where everybody is, so I take that very seriously.
My name is Zoraida Diaz, and I am the fire chief of the Fremont Fire Department. And I've been with that organization, with Fremont, for 3 years. I've been serving as the fire chief for 9 months. And prior to coming to Fremont, I served as an assistant chief. I ended my career in Oakland after 17 years as the assistant chief of operations. My day-to-day, it changes every day, but I am responsible for 172 members of the organization, which are both sworn and non-sworn personnel. I run the entire department, so I have to sometimes wear the hat of a fire marshal. So I have a prevention division, operations. I have an administrative division, and we are also responsible for emergency services for the entire city. So I'm responsible for 172 personnel, but I'm also responsible for 230 citizens of Fremont.
A lot of weight on your shoulders.
A little bit.
Do you have to do a lot of politics that you didn't have to do before?
Yeah, so, you know, as you start to come up in the ranks, it becomes a little more public facing. And so a lot of what I do is build relationships, not only with other department heads within the city, but the mayor, the city manager, and all of the council members. And the council members have initiatives which the fire department, public safety, everyone in the city supports. So with that comes community engagement. So I find myself being, you know, in front of the camera upon request, but also, you know, reading to little kids. I just did that 2 weeks ago where I, you know, read them a book called The Miracle of 133rd Street. I grew up on 123rd in Lexington in New York, and so that kind of spoke to me. The book is about a Puerto Rican family, and my being Puerto Rican, both my parents being Puerto Rican. I'm a New York Rican, but both my parents being of Puerto Rican descent, it kind of speaks to me. What I love about being in the fire service is that it's not a routine that's the same every day. So I have what's called the in-basket every day that I come in. I have to prioritize what I'm going to give my attention to. But ultimately, I'm serving. I'm serving the members, I'm serving the city and the citizens.
Would you like to connect?
Sure. My name is Asha Wagner. I'm a captain with the San Jose Fire Department. I've been with San Jose for 22 years. I did 6 seasons of Wildland prior to that, working on a trails crew, engine crews, spent a season on Helitac. Currently, I'm the captain of a truck company. I'm also the captain of the hazardous materials company for San Jose. I am a hazmat team manager for FEMA Task Force 3, and I'm also on the South Bay Incident Management team. So my day-to-day usually involves a lot of training. In addition to the responses and normal station duties, I'm the training captain for the hazmat program in the department. So twice a year, I have to put on trainings for all of our relief hazmat members, as well as train my crew members, do succession planning with them, whether they want to promote to engineer, inspector, captain, day-to-day drilling on both truck company operations and hazardous materials operations, and then just all the other administrative stuff that comes with the job.
I'm a hazmat specialist too.
Love that.
Yeah.
So I'm fairly new, probationary firefighter, engineer, paramedic, Tamara-Leah Jackson with the Santa Clara County Fire Department. I've been on for about 8 months now, hit the line in April. So my day-to-day, it kind of depends on what the crew is doing. So for day one, I may have to recheck out the rigs, make sure that the tools are working appropriately, chainsaws. Also, I'm working on my engineer task book as well, so I have to make sure that the rig, the engine is good to go, and then also the EMS equipment, since I am a paramedic, so I have to check out my NARCs. And then once all of that is done, we have our morning meetings, and then we may hit the rest of the day with training, or I give a presentation being the probie of any topics that's in my task book that I need to complete before my module exam. So,
how long is your probation?
18 months. It is 18 months.
And how many months are you into that?
I am is 8 months.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
it's too many to count right now. But it's great. I'm learning a lot. It's a great experience throughout the whole thing, even though it is long. But I just say I have 18 months to perfect, my job and make sure that I get all the training that I need as much as I can.
All the best and welcome to the space.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
So you currently get to drive as a probationary firefighter?
I do.
That must be really cool for kids to see you in that front seat driving that rig, huh?
The look that I recently got was from, we were passing by an elementary school and I'm driving the engine. We're just doing some familiarization of the neighborhood and the kids are looking at me like, and I literally see this little girl going, and I'm like, hi. And she's just like still trying to process, So it was fun. But yeah, it's
It's nice. A good feeling.
Yeah, it is a great feeling.
I want to hear about your life before the fire service, and specifically I'm aiming at careers or jobs that you had. And so a huge demographic of our followers are career changers. They're in a job, they want to be in this career, and so making that transition. So I'd love to learn about your past jobs, your past careers. And I think you have all of you have really interesting stories, but can we start off with you? Is that okay?
All right. Sure, absolutely. So, as I mentioned earlier, I was born and raised in New York City, and I went to undergrad and graduate school in Albany, 3 hours north of New York. And at one point, I lived in Albany for 10 years. I was looking to do something different. I served as a social worker for 15 years in New York City. I worked with mostly adolescent, homeless population, and I also lived in the hood. So I grew up in Harlem, and so that can be a little difficult to separate the two. And much like a lot of social workers, I kind of got burnt out and was looking for a new career and also a new place to live. So I traveled quite a bit, fell in love with the Bay Area, and I decided that I wanted to move to the Bay Area. And so I started my journey. I sold all of my stuff. I had a 1986 Toyota Camry stick, and I packed it up with all of my belongings. I had family in Denver. I had a job lined up in LA. So I ended up going to Denver looking for full-time work. And as I started to run out of my savings, I had to make a decision to get a job. So I went to LA. I worked for a production company there for the show Friends. And I was the receptionist. I did that for 10 months. And then I transitioned over to a magazine subscription. And me being of Puerto Rican descent, I double majored in Spanish in college. So I was able to take that website and create a Spanish version of it. So I did that for a little bit too, and then I realized I really want to move to the Bay. So I started coming up here looking for work, and I got a job with a university in which I became a recruiter. So my first job started in Fremont, so it's kind of full circle how I'm ending my career in Fremont. But I got a job for the university, and my district was in Oakland. I was able to go, you know, to the high schools, right, in East Oakland, in Richmond, in Pinot, and speak to the kids about the importance of education. And so they were able to relate to me in that sense. But when I started to learn from them that they were getting in debt with student loans, I started to think about, ethically, this isn't something I want to continue to do. In the meantime, when I was living in LA, I signed up for the Life Cycles AIDS ride. And so I moved up here, and I ended up meeting Christy Porteous, someone that you know as well. Yeah. Coincidentally, and there's really no coincidences, she was also from New York. She needed a tent mate. I was on the line. They asked, does anyone need a tent mate? We shared a tent. She was a teacher from New York, and she was pursuing a career in the fire service. At the same time, I was looking for an apartment because I was living with some friends, and I ended up becoming her next door neighbor. So my introduction to the fire service was through Christy. She got hired with the Oakland Fire Department, and at the end of an academy, they do what's called a Family and Friends Day. And so Christy invited me to that, and I was recruited by members of the Oakland Black Firefighters Association. They approached me, and they said, is this something you might be interested in? So they did an exercise where the recruits and other companies work together to do different types of, you know, fire operations. And so they were doing rescue, they were extinguishing fires, throwing ladders. And I was like, man, this is really cool, right? I was an athlete in college. I played softball. And so I just really was inspired by the camaraderie and the teamwork that it took to complete that exercise. The one thing I was a little concerned about was the ladder, you know, the stick, and I was like, ooh, that's high. But, you know, I was like, I could totally do that. So when they approached me, members of the Oakland Black Firefighters Association, I really felt like they wanted me to be a part of their team, right? So I think that's very important. So I began learning what it takes to become, you know, a firefighter. Had no clue. It wasn't anything I was ever interested in, right? I was a social worker. But similarities in the sense that we're helping people. And so I started going to classes, and very quickly I got on the fast track. I completed my EMT license. I competed for an exam with Oakland, and that was the only exam that I competed for. But I got together with a bunch of women, 5 other women, who were just as interested as I was in pursuing a career in the fire service. And 4 out of 5 of us are members of the fire service, right? So 3 of us worked for Oakland. I'm no longer there. One of them is the fire marshal of Oakland. One is a captain, and my wife, who is about to retire. So that's kind of my journey of how I got into the fire service. Really didn't think I would ever become a firefighter.
How old were you when you started pursuing the fire service?
That's a great question. So I was on the fast track because I was 36 years old. Literally the same week, day 2 of the academy was my 36th birthday. And so I created a plan. I said, you know, because I was starting a little bit older, I said I need to get hired with a fire department between, you know, 3 to 5 years. So because I worked for that university with my friends that were pursuing the same career, we did everything together. We studied the mechanical aptitudes, the reading comprehension, the mathematics. We'd go to each other's homes and we'd study, take the test, time ourselves, right? And then once we completed that part of it, we started doing station visits, and we would practice our interviews with other members, tweak it, come back, do it again. And then the biggest thing that I thought was the coolest, I lived in an apartment building in Oakland, and so we got some hose that was out of service, and Oakland used to do their own physical agility at the time, and part of it was a hose pull. So we would go to the roof of my building, and we would add weight to that hose bundle and just practice for time. Like at first it was like trying to get it up, because that was the biggest challenge. It was a barrier really for women to be successful with that physical agility. And so we started practicing that to the point where we can get it done with 10 pounds added to that hose bundle in no time. And so everything that we did together, and we were all motivated. We didn't all get hired at the same time, but we would reach back and, make sure that the next person that was up was prepared so that they can be successful as well. 36 years old.
What are some of the skill sets and experiences that you found most beneficial from your previous life before the fire service that transferred over into the fire service?
So I would say the social work, right? Understanding people. I've built my career in the fire service by, one, having those uncomfortable conversations when needed, holding myself accountable, holding others accountable as well, but having the courage to make some decisions that might feel uncomfortable, like promoting, right? So my ability to understand people and build relationships with people, everyone knows that I keep it real 100% of the time, right? And I think that that's important because people just want to know what the expectations are. And so sometimes it's uncomfortable to be in that position. So utilizing that in a sense, like crisis management as a social worker, working with people, who were homeless, working with people with mental illnesses, that's all we do to some degree in the fire service. But day to day, dealing not only with the internal stakeholders, but also members of the community, it kind of made it a little easy for me. Also growing up in the hood, you're not very intimidated by things, you can't be. And so I kind of felt like working in Oakland, like I was home.
Oakland definitely has that vibe.
It has that vibe. And seeing, when I drove, like seeing the reaction of people, when you're driving as an engineer with lights and sirens, it's like it gives you this feeling like, wow, you're making an impression on someone. That's why I asked you that, because I used to get it all the time. And then when I moved over to the other seat, like every position, when there's a reflection of who you are, serving in the community, it makes a huge difference.
You recently shared an experience of riding around the city and a response you got, I believe, from a little girl recently. Do you want to go into that, and maybe from there you can?
So I was doing training at the station. So I'm in my turnouts. We were just pulling hose, and I see a little girl, and I think it's just her. I think her mom was pushing her in a cart stroller across the street, and they're just sitting there watching. And I'm like finished loading hose, and I turned to my captain. I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go give a sticker." So, like anytime, I'm all ready with my stickers, even in my turnouts. So I put on my helmet and I left my jacket, and then I went and gave a sticker, and I was like, "Hi, my name is Tamara-Leah. What's your name?" She tells me her name, and I said, "I want to give you a sticker. Is that okay?" And she's like, "Yeah." And her mom's like, "Oh, we walk across, this area all the time." And I was like, "Well, don't be shy. You will give you a tour anytime. Just stop by the station." And but for me, it was very touching for me because the little girl looked at me like she's never seen a female firefighter, let alone a Black female firefighter. And in the area that we serve, there aren't many Black people there either. So she was just, I think you could just see like just so much is going on. But yeah, that was that experience. Also another reason why I love doing what I do. It was just a sticker, but for her, it could be a core memory, of something that she's witnessed. And my path to the fire service was also not a straight path. I went to college and got a degree in molecular biology, minored in chemistry. At the time, I was going to be a scientist, in the research field, either that or go to med school. But as I completed college, and I ended up working at a desk job, human resources and benefits department. There were some problems that happened in my family. I lost some important people in my life, and just remembering that helplessness that I felt of we wanted to ask the doctors, we couldn't really communicate, we didn't even know if they were getting the right treatment, or there's just a lot of I don't knows and whys. And and a lot of my family members were like, well, Tamara, you went to school, like you should know. I said, no, molecular biology. I understand how the cascade of an infection happens. But this, I have no idea. And so that kind of, I was in my role as a HR assistant for about 3 years, and it just propelled me to go back. Because, it's like a job after you get out of college, you're like, I'm just going to take it, And so it kind of shifted my focus. And while I was working at that job, I decided I'm going to do my EMT at the local junior college. Did that, so full-time at work and also doing EMT school. Went into the 911 system after a year of working as IFT in Alameda County. But once I got into the 911 system, it was my first experience with the fire department. I was confused. Excuse the ignorance, but I have never seen an engine in real life. I've only seen them on TV when they're actively fighting a fire. We responded to a house for a possible stroke, and I'm helping my medic getting the gear into the house. And I look up and I'm like, what are you guys doing here? This is, and it was the engineer, because everybody else was busy. And the engineer was like, oh yeah, we respond to medicals. We have paramedics. As the time goes on of working in the 911 system, it started planting more seeds. Hey, you can do this. And I'm like, no, I'm going to work in the hospital. My path is just to get into the hospital so I can help more people. And so they started planting more and more seeds. And then I was like, okay, well, let me just see. So I did my first ride-along and station visit before COVID. And from there on, I was hooked. I can absolutely throw a ladder. I can absolutely do whatever you want me to do, because it was like the catch-all of helping everyone. Because I grew up advocating for other people. Like my mom was a domestic violence advocate. We did Girl Scouts. Like we always were giving back to the community growing up. So I was like, this is absolutely where I need to be. And so that's how I got my medic on a scholarship with AMR, and then applied. And then it's just, the rest is, I'm here now. While raising twins. Yeah. Yeah.
Man.
Busy.
I got introduced to the fire service actually through my mom, one of her really good friends. I have a young mom. She's only 20 years older than me. So I was 19. My mom was 39. And her really good friend was trying to get her to apply. She already worked for the city, but she was like, you need to come over to the fire service. So that was my introduction. I actually did pass, and my mom didn't make the ladder raise by 1/10 of a second. But she was really buff. She was in great shape. And I did pass. I got disqualified on a paperwork thing, which I do believe in fate and your path. I was definitely too immature at the time, and so it's good that I did not get in at 19 or 20. I was kind of a hothead. It probably wouldn't have worked for me. And then I pursued working in an office, and I've always been taught that you work in an office and you wear a suit, that means that you are successful. And that's a woman's path. So I come from a blue-collar working family. College was never even mentioned. It was, you can go get a job or you can go into the military, and that's the space that I was raised in. There wasn't money, and my parents didn't go to college, and so it wasn't even something that they talked about. So I went straight to work out of high school, and I did work in an investment banking firm, which is a very male, testosterone-driven environment. And I think the only difference between an investment banking firm and the fire service is that we are not as politically correct. But it's definitely a very male-dominated industry, and it's very competitive, and a lot of alpha males and a lot of alpha personalities. And so right when I got my letter that said that I was coming into the fire department, JP Morgan bought my firm, and all of my friends got laid off, and they were all out of jobs. And so when I was coming into the tower, even though you're studying on a hydrant, and in the pouring rain, I was always smiling because I had a job. And they were like, oh, we're so tired of you smiling. We're gonna break you. Like, we're gonna, you know, and I had a 3-year-old at home that I had to send to my mom's because she was not happy with my books and peed on them on purpose. Actually, because she's so mad at the studying that was constantly happening while you're in the tower. So my mom took my oldest child. And then I just remember the very first day walking into the firehouse, and I was at a very senior station, a lot of old guys. I did not grow up with a father figure, and to walk into this atmosphere with these men that took you under your wing and taught you so much and cared about you. And that was just very new for me, very different for me, but they were also very rough and hard, but cared deeply for your safety. And it was I was just like, I am where I should be. I am where I belong. And I will never forget those individuals and everything that they've taught. And it was really where I belonged. And I've never, not one day, ever looked back with regret or felt that I wasn't in the space where I belong. And I remember on the morning of 9/11 coming into work and sitting at that table and us all being glued to the TV. And even in that moment of, I did have a like, what am I doing here? This is crazy. Still feeling very safe because of the family that is in the firehouse. We take care of each other, and that's the one thing that, hands down, I love about this job. It's we take care of each other. It doesn't matter what city you're in. If you need help, it doesn't matter where you are in this country. You are family.
I have a question for both of you. Having kids, what are some challenges that you found to work-life balance, and what are some mechanisms that you found or strategies that you found to help with that?
Childcare. Childcare is probably hands down the hardest thing to find if you don't have a family support system. Like, I have a mom. I was born and raised in San Francisco. My mom is there. My family's there. If you don't have that, it's probably one of the hardest parts is finding 24-hour childcare is unheard of. They want a schedule, they want 9 to 5. I'm a single mom. That if you don't have that support system, I think that's one of the biggest hurdles. And explaining to your children why you're working on Christmas morning, why you're not around for Halloween, why you can't always come to a play, trying to explain to them the job of why you're absent when everybody else's mom is tucking them in or cooking them dinner, braiding their hair in the morning, all that stuff, and you're not there. I think to me that was the hardest.
Yeah, I always had this mindset because the twins were 4 months old when I started medic school. So growing up, they've always seen me nose in the books, but I always made sure that, which was put more on myself because, I chose this life. And they didn't. And so I always made it a hard stop that when I'm at home, I don't put no books. I'm not talking about work. I'm just there with them. When it was medical school, it was different. I was singing my chapters to them because they didn't matter then. But yeah, I did back-to-back academies, and that was difficult for myself. But for the kids, as soon as I got home around 6, I played with them until 8. Hard stop at 8, we all went to bed. I woke up at 3 in the morning just to do my assignments and prep work leading up until it's time to get ready to go to academy. That part was difficult just for me, but the kids, they haven't complained in that aspect.
How old are they now?
They are 5.
Okay.
They are 5 years old. And my grandmother flew out for both academies and was my support system there. But I've also had she is such a godsend, but the babysitter caretaker that I have now, she's known the twins since they were 4 months old.
Oh,
and she believed in me when I was an EMT. And I said, I want to go to medic school. She said, $200 a week, it doesn't matter. And I said, per kid? And she's like, no, it doesn't matter. So through internship, she is a godsend, her and her family. I tell her all the time, I don't think I would be here without that, because I've never had solid support in that way. Of course, my family's on board now after everything,
Right.
because it's a lot of adjusting. But they were. It didn't matter how much my baby girl cried at 3 in the morning. They were like, "Oh, she's just a baby. It's fine." She was fine, you know. Never. I was always afraid of, what if they decide, you know what, Tamara, this is too much for us. But they never did. And so,
What a blessing.
yeah,
That is a blessing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard, even if you don't have children, to go through an academy, especially when you have 0 mechanical aptitude training, right? Like, you know, it sounds like the majority of us here, I'm not sure about you, Asha, had desk jobs, right? Or worked in an office and knew nothing about it. My father was living at the time, and he came out. Support is so important. He came out and he stayed with me while I was going through the academy, 6.5-month, you know, academy. And I remember him telling me at times, they're gonna kill you before you even get the job, you know? Because it was brutal. Like, there's no way to prepare yourself. Like, physically you can prepare yourself, but psychologically, it's important training to have, because the things that you're gonna see and you have to perform, you know, during times that are challenging. But having that support, you know, my dad used to make me breakfast, you know, every morning. He'd do laundry, he, you know, clean the house, and I was blessed to have him, you know. But to your point also, like, for me, the fire service stepped up for me when my dad was diagnosed with lung cancer, right? So you all know that you have unlimited training in some cases, and so I had people work for me for free without me having to pay them back, so that I can go home and help my dad transition. That is what I love about this career, is that once you're part of the family, you are part of the family, you know?
I don't know any other job like this.
There is no other job like this where people really care and they'll do anything for you. But to have the support is hands down necessary to get into an academy that long, you know, so.
And I just want to just comment on what you just said about the support from fire, just your fire family. That's something that I'm still like racking my brain about, because I'm used to just doing it on my own, right? I don't really, I'll ask for help when I really, really need it, but for the most part, I don't like to play too many of my cards, right? Recently, my daughter was sick. Well, took a while to recover. Just getting a random text saying, "Hey, are you good?" And I'm just like, oh, I'm thinking, oh, maybe they're just being nice. And they're like, "No, I'm off today too, but are you good?" And I'm like, yeah, don't usually, not used to that, you know?
Yeah.
Culturally different.
Yeah.
Culturally different.
Very.
Yes.
Very.
I couldn't put a name to it, but that's, you know?
It's true.
It is.
It's true.
It's like, you know, oh, it's your kids. You got it. You're fine. And you're like, oh, I'm not really fine.
Right.
I'm singing my chapters at night.
But I will be fine. You're right. Eventually,
I'm just having a moment.
A weak moment. Don't show
Yeah.
The first job that I can ever remember wanting to do when I was in preschool was to be a firefighter. And then somewhere along the line, just a little bit later, I really wanted to become an astronaut. And that led to a love of, you know, airplanes and anything that flies. And like, well, you know, if I'm going to be a pilot, I want to have some fun when I'm up there. I don't want to just go from point A to point B. So I found out about aerial tanker firefighting. Like, yes, that is the job for me. And then there was the '89 earthquake. So during the earthquake and seeing the Cypress Freeway collapse and the bridge collapse, you know, I knew at that time that I wanted to be in a position to help out, but I just didn't quite know what shape that was going to take yet. And then during the 91 Hills fire, that came within 3/4 of a mile of my house. And I was like 15 or 16 at the time. And one of my neighbors hopped on his bike, went up into the hills to help fight the fires. And I was in high school, so there was no way my parents were going to let me out of their sight to go do that. And I got like a front row seat seeing the tankers fly overhead. I'm like, I either want to be flying the planes or jumping out of them, like smoke jumping, something like that. When I was 17, I got an internship in Oakland with the Oakland Fire Department and their Bureau of Fire Prevention. And it was good to get the exposure to the fire service, meet people that were in the job, get advice on different paths, how to get started in it. But it also made me know that office work was not for me, that I wanted to be in the field doing something. I wanted to have a little bit more variety in my life. When I went to college, I majored in forestry and natural resources with a concentration in wildland fire management. And one of my instructors there helped to get me my first job with the U.S. Forest Service on a trails crew. And that was just right up my alley because it was physically challenging. It was just good, demanding work. I worked my way through college doing that, and then I spent some time on wildland engine crews, and then I got my dream job on the helicopter, which is a super fun way to get to a fire. So it's pretty much the same job as smoke jumping. So we'd fly out to it, throw a couple ropes over the side, slide down, fight the fire. And then if the fire turned into an extended incident, then we would go and staff the helibase and send supplies out to the crews, do work at heli spots, ferrying crews out there. After that, I needed to stay a little bit closer to home, so I worked for CDF, which is now Cal Fire. Spent a season with them, went on a whole bunch of strike teams. Actually, there was one I worked 24 days straight, had 48 hours off, and then worked another 24 days straight. And then I think it was the morning that I got off work that we met at Station 3. And we're learning how to throw ladders and just doing a station visit. And yeah, so there's just been so many people that have helped me along the way get into that. And then while I was working for CDF, San Jose Fire Department's recruitment officer, Russell Hayden, saw me in the parking lot and came up to me and was like, "Have you applied with us?"
Russell Hayden.
Yeah, like I didn't even know y'all were hiring because I've been on a strike team for the past like, month. And so I applied and got in with San Jose in 2001. And then it's kind of funny, another story, just bringing things full circle, is in my academy, the hazmat captain came down. He gave us a quick little talk, and he was saying, he was talking about different terror organizations and different threats and just an overview of hazmat in general. And this was probably about May or June in 2001. And one of the things I remember him saying is, yeah, so all these organizations are really dangerous, but the one that we really got to watch out for is Osama bin Laden. And then 3 months later, the world changed.
Wow.
I'm like, oh, okay. And so pretty much every day I go into work, I just think, yeah, now I have that dude's job. So I just feel the responsibility of that, and trying to do my best to look out for, my line personnel and the community at large.
I got to ask you a question.
Shoot.
So you would fly to an incident
Right.
and climb down on a rope.
Yep.
Share with us how exactly did you fight fire?
Hand tools.
Hand tools.
Yep.
Okay.
So one of my favorite all-time fires was this lightning strike that came out on the top of a hill, maybe about 10,000 feet up. And it was a little 20 by 20 fire. So they flew us out at sunset. We landed in a helispot. This one we actually hiked about an hour and a half into the fire because it was pretty easy hiking. We got there, we had our hand tools with us. We put a line around it. We stayed there all night. In the morning, they flew in some more water inside of a case that we used to mop up a little bit, dropped down some smoky snacks to us on like a sling load from the helicopter.
Smoky snacks.
Slightly better than MREs. And then we hiked out. And afterwards, I'm thinking, so the U.S. Forest Service just paid me time and 3/4 to take a scenic helicopter ride at sunset.
Yes.
Then they paid me for an hour and a half nature hike. They had a campfire waiting for me when I got there. They gave me breakfast in bed, and then paid me for another nature hike and another scenic helicopter ride. And when I was out there, like 10,000 feet up on the top of this mountain, I couldn't see like a sign of another human for 360 degrees around.
Wow.
So this is some place that most people will never set foot. And so it was just such an amazing experience.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah,
that sounds pretty awesome to like fly in on a helicopter or, a tanker when the sun is setting. That's pretty amazing.
It's a great way to get to a fire.
Yeah, I'm cool on that though.
For us city kids, I'm like, no.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm good on that one. I'll take a structure fire all day, every day. But a wildland fire, I don't know about that one.
A little bit shaking out there. What's that moving?
Right.
No, okay, we're good.
But what's funny is there's people watching right now who identify with that, who see themselves in that, and who feel like, man, the office isn't for me either.
Yeah.
And I want to be doing exactly that. And she put it into words for me. So incredible.
And I've been playing organized team sports since I was 8. So I love being a part of a team. I love jobs that are physically and mentally demanding, and so fire service was a natural fit for me.
And you got all that in one.
Yeah.
It's also pretty awesome that you knew, early on that this is what you wanted to do,
Yeah.
That's cool.